Hi everyone, welcome. We're about to check in on my red wigglers that I refer to as my original red wigglers because these are the original worms that I started out with, or at least the descendants of. 'Cause, I mean, I started out many years ago. I doubt that a worm would live as long as I've been worm farming. But these are the only two bins that have worms living in them that I can trace back to the original tray of worms that I started with. And I'm not sure if it's coming through on the camera or maybe he snuck away before. I don't know. I thought I saw, ever since I bought these two systems out onto the bench, I've been seeing little flying insects buzzing around. And as I've been doing in most of my systems, I've been trying to lay in some preventative mosquito dunks solution, which could actually help you do away with an outbreak if you've got one going on. But when I start to see any hint, I'd like to just sort of treat that as the situation that needs to be addressed already and start treating it. So I'm just going to remove some of these top covering bits of material, although it probably doesn't matter much if we leave it to get a little bit of this stuff sprayed on there too. Because I'm assuming that if there are any flying insects trying to make themselves at home down in here, then they're somewhere near the surface. They're not like a burrowing type of a creature as far as I know, but I could be completely wrong. So since this stuff is really intended for them, I'd rather get this stuff laid out before things get disturbed and spun around. So I see our feeding zone indicator is such that I can't even hardly pick it up without shredding it. I don't have coffee for them today, but I might have a couple pieces of paper that we can use as feeding zone indicators. This feeding zone indicator right here is holding up pretty nicely, actually. Feeding zone indicator. I do have a couple bins where I've varied from my typical feeding pattern, which is just to feed the systems down the middle. I've got one system where I'm just going from side to side, back and forth. I've got another one where I'm actually going in a clockwise rotation, visiting every corner, a new corner each time we check in, sort of taking laps around. Here we're treating these guys pretty routine. I've got some pumpkin snacks for these little guys, and guess what? A couple stems for them, and one of the bins is actually going to get a stem that still has a whole bunch of pumpkin attached to it. This one, the stem must have fallen off from the pumpkin, didn't get any of that stuff attached to it. And well, it was down here in bin number 1 that we placed any of the little baby worms that, not baby worms, just straggler worms, I guess. We relocated these worms into this bin 45 days ago, but this material that they left behind was thought to have a good number of worms living in it still, and possibly cocoons that would still be looking to get hatched, and those worms could get rounded up as well, babies. So we laid out some bait in the harvested castings that these guys left behind, and we collected up a good many worms that were released into here, into bin number 1 last time. We gave both bins a feeding, and then the stragglers collected out of the harvested castings came into here, and it is kind of nice to see everyone interacting in the comments of that other video. If you haven't seen it yet, I invite you to go check it out. I'll put a link up in the corner of the release of the worms into here, where people get to see how many worms did get rounded up in the bait station. And then everyone also, not everyone, but a whole bunch of people kicked in their estimates for how many worms they thought were released. And then I always keep track of all those numbers. I average everyone's estimates together, and then that ends up becoming the new worm count for my bins. That's how I come up with my worm count estimates. So the stuff they got, radish leaves, I don't know why, for some reason the radish leaves stick out, because I did skim through the video from last time, but I think all the other stuff that were placed in here as food too were all kind of fast composting type stuff, like the radish leaves. Here and there I'm seeing nice amounts of bedding, just little clumps of it here and there. Luckily, nothing is sticking together or getting muddy. There's a high degree of moisture in here, but I guess maybe just because there's a lot of bedding everywhere, it it all's pretty free flowing as far as I can tell. Oh, is this where we had fed whole pears a couple feedings ago? This might be the remains of this whole pear that was fed into here. And if it is that, then that goes back a couple feedings now. And now I'm starting to bump into some things that are actually leftovers. I thought I wasn't really finding any leftovers, and then all I had to do was just open my eyes, and there they were, staring me right in the face. But either way, that's okay. Leftovers usually don't detract me from... Detract, is that the right word? Distract me from? Won't derail me from. Finding leftovers will definitely not derail me from an intended feeding. In most cases, I think I've possibly had 1 or 2 occasions to actually find that, you know, the bin doesn't need to be fed after all, and then I would skip it. But that is very, very rare. Alright, for whatever reason, I just thought we would do a little exploration of the outer edges of the systems before we would dive down into the feeding zones. Give everything a little bit of aeration. You know, only about a month and a half old at this point. I'm still kind of treating these as fairly young systems that I want to keep an eye on, but everything in both of these bins looks really nice. I especially like the way all the material is so nice and fluffy. So let's see if we can find that pear that would have been probably fed to this system as well. There we go. Now that when you know what you're looking for, it just kind of surfaces 1, 2, 3. And perhaps there's other little bits and pieces of leftover stuff, but mainly it's just a bunch of leftover bedding, I think, that we're bumping into in pretty great amounts everywhere. Here we saw a bunch of apple peels and other things too, but here, I don't know, not sure. Maybe I've already just breezed right by it and I just wasn't paying attention. So now, you know, definitely like the idea of being generous with bedding, but I'm a little bit unprepared, I'll admit that. But, you know, I was almost thinking that if we were to just grab what had been laid out here as the top covering newspaper, I could always go fetch a nice replacement top covering, then this would actually be a pretty nice, generous application of bedding to accompany today's feeding. So why don't we do it that way? And in this case, over here in bin number 1, feeding zone indicator was so far gone already that it seems sensible to just use that as bedding too. Or is that still usable? Maybe it is. Even if it gets eaten by the next time we come back here, I think we'll still have pretty good luck tracking down the feeding zone, even if there's no feeding zone indicator remaining for us to get guided thereby. So whatever, we'll just hang on to that, and let's bring in some food. This is all coming straight out of my freezer. Lots of it is in big chunks, and then I even did something unusual over here. I grabbed a couple things that would normally be considered as slow composting food items. An avocado, but I took a saw to it and cut straight through the seed, so the seed is down here in the middle within the avocado, which is within its shell. And then I also had just a spare avocado pit or seed or whatever. And since those are both the halves of something, here's the other half of that. And where's the other half of the other one? Well, you know what? Let's get stems in here. That's obvious. A little bit more pumpkin. Oh, here's another thing. I took, if you look at it from the side, you might already recognize what it is. I took some seeds from mangoes too and cut those up as well, giving worms direct access to the inside, which is often obscured for a while until the seed's husk gets penetrated. So there we go. We've had a chance to pretty much examine every piece of food that went in here, and stuff like this, these pumpkin stems, they're going to take forever, if you ask me. But these systems are young, 45 days of age, with only feeding number 5 going in today. So I've got my grit. Let's give them some of that too, and we'll be pretty much finished. The grit I'm using here is pulverized eggshell, something that the worms can ingest with their foods, and working all that stuff through their gizzards, they're able to digest the food a little bit easier. So let's get things covered back up and we'll be done. Alright. For some reason I feel like I was a little bit stingy on bedding there. I probably could have been a little bit more generous. Perhaps I'm just not as concerned in these younger systems where I just see bedding everywhere anyway. I just don't feel like there's a serious lack. It's a nice feeding. That pumpkin's probably going to be popular. There's a lot of those things in there though that we fed. Avocado stuff and mango stuff. A lot of that stuff is just going to take forever. That's for sure. So I would never put those types of foods into older systems. But in the younger system like this one, it's totally cool. So, you know what? I haven't got top covering newspapers, but I do want to have them. So I'm going to have to go fetch some paper to lay out here and cover things up. And then back on will come the plastic covers, I think. And all the most of the other systems that I have that are older than these have already had their plastic covers removed just to prevent things from getting sticky. But I'm definitely liking the moisture here, so I'm sticking with what's working, and I'm going to put those plastic stuff covers back on. But for that stuff, I don't think you need to stick around. It's kind of boring. But before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.